So in lieu of meeting for class this week, which is final exam week, which I don't think any of us wanted to do, I'm going to post this very short video. Now let me make clear what's already there in Module 10 Module 10, Module 15, whatever module it is on voting and elections. All right, you already have an intro video and you have narrated slides. That really covers what you need to know for the exam as well as what's in the book and the study guides. But I just thought I should double highlight since we didn't get to meet that last week. Things to think about in that section. One is, this idea of administrative burdens. We know, that from a Supreme Court decision from some years ago, the Supreme Court said, that we need to treat all the states alike. We cannot hold some states to a higher standard on changing their voting rules and regulations. So they struck down that pre-clearance provision of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And said no state needs pre-clearance to change their voting rules. They can go ahead and change them as they see fit. And then, look, someone could raise a challenge after the fact. Once they've changed the rules and they've gone into effect, if you can bring a legal claim against the state for discriminating against people of color as long as you have data to support that there's been a disparate impact on voters of color. All right, so the court didn't get rid of that part of the Voting Rights Act. That would have killed the whole thing completely. They just got rid of the pre-clearance provision, So we know that in the wake of that decision in 2013, a lot of Republican-dominated states rushed in because they were the ones that were being held to the higher standard because of their history. They rushed in with a whole array of voting changes, designed, quite honestly, to make it a bit more difficult. Now, their argument is, voter integrity, elections integrity, albeit, in the absence of any evidence that there was an actual problem with the integrity of their own elections. It was kind of a theoretical concern. They argued, justified these administrative burdens to make it harder for voters to access the ballot. Not impossible, just a little bit harder. Just a little bit harder. So that's been a trend, since 2013, specific to red states. And again, I know it's a complicated debate. I'm not going to resolve it here. But I would just note, that in some cases, we have government programs where we try to lower those burdens as much as possible to make that program accessible to we the people. The quintessential example is Social Security. Imagine if to qualify for Social Security upon retirement, you had to then present to a federal agency all of your pay stubs from when you started working at the age of 16 or whatever to the age of 70. You have to document your income every year. The government could do that, because they would know, if we do that, a lot of people won't qualify, or they'll only have some stubs, so they'll only get partial payments. It's a great way to restrict access to the program, But we decided not to do that, didn't we? We could have done that. We can attach whatever conditions we want, well, generally speaking, but we decided not to do that. We said, no, we want people to get these benefits. So the IRS will track their pay over the years. The federal government will take care of that administrative burden. And upon retirement, we the people merely need to fill out some fairly minimal paperwork, and then the payments start flowing. So we made a conscious decision to lower the burdens to improve access. And I know voting's different. Although fraud, is a problem with any program. So you can always justify more administrative burdens. But sometimes we go for higher burdens, sometimes we go for lower. I'm just saying, in red states, they've gone for higher burdens. And in blue states, they've made the burdens lower. Depending on how you feel about the right of access to suffrage and what you think the real threats are to massive electoral fraud that can swing elections, which hasn't happened. You can find isolated cases here and there, of course, in the relatively recent past. But generally speaking, it doesn't happen anymore in the modern era. And when it happens, it's this, what I call petty fraud. Someone who votes twice because they're so committed to, let's say, Donald Trump. Hard to imagine someone being that committed to Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't inspire that kind of loyalty. He doesn't. He's boring. But there were a number of Trump voters last time around, right? They were so excited by Trump that they tried to vote twice. It's like, yeah, whatever. That's going to happen. Stuff like that's going to happen. That'll always be with us. If you want the perfect election, you don't want an election. So you have to accept some level of petty fraud. Hopefully we catch just about all of it. Try to punish the people appropriately. I don't think the punishment should be too harsh. Yeah, so administrative burdens and voting. Think about that as an issue. What else? I think I traced in those slides how one's racial identity has an impact on how one votes. Right? Whites tend to vote Republican. They tended to vote for Trump the last two elections. Right? If only white people voted, Trump would have won both elections by a hefty margin. If only people of color voted in both elections, Trump would have lost overwhelmingly in both elections. We obviously don't do it either of those ways, nor should we. I'm just saying it highlights racial patterns in voting habits, right? Black Americans in particular, right, voted heavily against Trump, like 8.7 to 1, almost 9 to 1. Latinos and Asian Americans, right, more like 2 to 1. Still significant, right, but a much narrower gap, Trump versus Biden. Young people voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden. Older people voted heavily for Donald Trump. And then some other patterns we want to check out, demographic patterns. Those to me are interesting, right? Sort of a sociological angle on voting patterns in America. You know, one's identity, right? Gender identity, racial identity, religious identity. It influences how one votes in elections. It's one of those hidden brain things, right? We don't think of that when we go to vote, but it is influencing us, even if we don't realize it. Hidden brain. What else? The campaign for the presidency. 6 states are the ones that matter. 6, count them, 6. Right? 6 states are what determine the Electoral College winner these days. The number of states that are critical in each cycle, it changes, a little bit over time. I can remember when Ohio and Florida were swing states. They aren't anymore. They're significantly Republican. So those states are no longer in play or in doubt. Right, the 6, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia. Now, those are all 50-50 states. So that's where the campaigns take place in the presidential election, in those 6 states. Right, Texas decided. New York decided. California decided. Illinois decided. Mississippi decided. You get the idea. And it's winner take all, right? If you win a state's popular vote, you get all the delegates to the college. So that dictates campaign strategy. And right now it's 6 states, the ones I just mentioned. That's crazy! That's crazy. Is that any way to run a presidential election in a country of over 330 million people? I have my doubts. But it's how we roll. Other things to note, I don't know. I think that's probably what I needed to highlight. All right, so good luck. And good luck with all your future endeavors. I didn't get a chance to say that on the last day. Thanks for the good semester. And happy holidays. Take care. Be safe.